So imagine for a second, right? You are riding this dusty, just rattling bus through the vast, blindingly bright expanse of the Iranian desert.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and outside your window, the landscape is just ancient. It's totally silent. You're surrounded by local women wearing these full, traditional, incredibly conservative veils. It's this scene defined by really quiet reverence, you know?
Right. A very solemn kind of atmosphere.
Exactly. But inside your head, you have your
Wow.
headphones clamped on, and you are absolutely blasting an IU Romix, which, if you aren't familiar, is this hyper-produced, high BPM, glitzy Eurobeat remix of the Japanese pop star Ayumi Hamasaki.
That is just, I mean, it's the ultimate sensory whiplash.
Right. Inside his brain, it's a neon-lit Tokyo underground nightclub at 2 a.m., but outside, it's an ancient desert.
It's wild.
So welcome to the deep dive, that bizarre, just beautiful clash of cultures. It's exactly what we are getting into today, because today we are instantly transporting you to a very specific time and place. Japan, the year 2001.
Completely different world.
Yeah, a world without smartphones, without Google Maps, without, a single instant translation app in your pocket.
Which, honestly, for anyone listening who's feeling exhausted by the constant pinging of their devices today, which is all of us, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, exploring this 2001 landscape, it serves as a fascinating, almost inverse antidote to our modern digital fatigue.
Exactly. It's a total detox. And if
Ah.
you've been following our ongoing exploration of this source material, we've been tracking a backpacker named Marcy.
Right.
He has just completed this grueling, thrilling hitchhiking journey spanning the entire length of Japan, from the snowy, freezing north of Sapporo all the way down to Kyushu in the south.
And he's currently standing on the precipice of a massive continent-spanning journey across Asia, right? Because he's about to board a ferry to South Korea.
He is. But before we cross that ocean, I realized I have a whole stack of unanswered questions from our previous sessions.
Oh, nice. We're doing a bit of a detour.
Yeah. So today is a special spin-off Q&A deep dive. We are unpacking his untold survival secrets, his near disasters, and these profound philosophical shifts he experienced on the road.
I love that.
And I want you to keep one core question in the back of your mind as we go through this today. How do you navigate the unknown and truly connect with others when you strip away every familiar tool, language, and digital safety net you normally rely on?
That's a huge question. It really forces us to look at how we behave when we have zero control over our environment.
Right, so let's start with survival. Because surviving on the road as a hitchhiker isn't just, sticking your thumb out and hoping for the best.
Definitely not. Not if you want to eat.
Exactly. I was reading through the notes, and there's this specific tactic he uses. How exactly do you get a stranger in a car to not just tolerate you, but actively want to buy you a meal?
Well, you have to become an entertainer. You're basically trading stories for survival.
Right.
But Marcy had refined this into a really highly structured conversational tactic. He didn't just dump his whole story at once. He used what we can call geographical leverage.
Geographical leverage.
Yeah. He used the sheer scale of his journey to systematically blow the driver's mind in 3 distinct stages.
Okay, I need to hear this.
So, level 1. He'd get in the car, make some small talk, and casually drop that he's from Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan.
Okay, but why does that matter to a driver? Like, why is that impressive?
Because of the physical and psychological distance. In Japan, especially in 2001, driving from Tokyo or Aomori all the way to Hokkaido, it isn't a casual weekend trip.
Oh, right. There's literally an ocean in the way.
Exactly. It requires ferries. So just meeting someone from Hokkaido down in the central or southern regions creates an immediate geographical shock.
Ah, I see. So he establishes that he is already incredibly far from home.
Right. Then, just as the driver is processing that, he hits them with level 2. He says, yeah, and I'm hitchhiking all the way down to Kyushu.
Which is the southernmost main island.
Exactly. So now the driver is reeling. They're thinking, wait, you are crossing the entire country, just relying completely on the kindness of strangers.
Wow.
And he's already secured his ride for the next few hours with that revelation alone.
Because they're hooked.
Totally hooked. But he holds back the final punch until they think they've grasped the absolute madness of his trip. Then he drops level 3.
There we go.
He says, and after Kyushu, I'm taking a ferry to South Korea, and then I'm traveling across the entire Asian continent all the way to Israel.
That is brilliant. It's like he's handing the driver a free ticket to a wider world. You give them a sense of global scale, and they pay for that ticket by, buying you a convenience store bento box.
Precisely. The driver becomes deeply personally invested in his journey.
Yeah.
But there is a really critical counterpoint to that hustle. Having a grand master plan is great for storytelling, but if you become too rigidly attached to that plan, it can become incredibly dangerous.
You mean the Tsukuba incident?
Yeah.
I want to dig into this because this sounds honestly terrifying.
It's a stark lesson in the danger of stubbornness. So picture this. It's 10:00 p.m. in Tsukuba, pitch black. The temperature is dropping, and Marcy is standing on the side of a dark road trying to flag down a ride.
Not an ideal situation.
Not at all. A local driver finally pulls over, and the driver takes one look at this kid in the dark and kindly offers to drive him straight to a nearby hotel. The driver's intention is totally pure. He's like, you need to stop for the night. It's not safe here.
But Marcy says no. Why? Why would he refuse a safe, warm bed?
Because it wasn't part of his master plan. He had this rigid schedule in his head. He stubbornly insisted on being dropped off at a specific interchange so he could continue hitchhiking in the dark. He forced the issue.
And that stubbornness actively invited danger.
Spectacularly so. Because he refused that simple life raft, he ended up stranded in an even darker, more isolated spot later that night.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and desperate, he flagged down a car with heavily tinted windows. When the doors opened, it was full of very intimidating Yakuza-like figures.
Oh, wow. So he literally traded the awkwardness of accepting help for genuine heart-pounding danger.
Exactly. And the tension in that car was palpable. I mean, he survived the encounter, obviously, but it was a massive wake-up call for him. When you are in the wild, rigidity is your enemy. You cannot force reality to bend to your itinerary.
Put yourself in that situation for a second. Just think about a time in your own life where you refused a simple life raft-like help from a colleague or an extension on a project or a chance to just rest simply because you were too attached to your own internal schedule.
We all do it.
We do. And that need for control can lead us into some really dark places.
It's a profound realization, and that shift learning to abandon control and embrace flexibility that actually became the absolute cornerstone for how he handled communication moving forward.
How so?
Because, as the sources point out, the language barrier was already hitting him hard before he even left Japan.
Yes. This actually blew my mind. We often think of Japan as having one unified language, right? But the sources mention that when he hit the Tohoku region in the northeast or down in Kyushu, the local dialects were 100% incomprehensible to him.
Right.
A guy from Hokkaido literally could not understand his own countrymen.
It sounded like a completely foreign language to him, which brings up a really interesting psychological test.
Okay.
When you are trapped in the passenger seat, moving at 60 miles an hour, and the driver is enthusiastically speaking to you in a dialect you fundamentally do not understand, what do you do?
Right. Do you panic? Do you politely ask them to speak standard Japanese? Like, what's the move?
Well, most people from a Western, highly logical background would try to force understanding. They demand clarity. But Marcy developed what he called the DJ technique.
I love this concept. But break down the how for me. How does one DJ a conversation without actually knowing the words?
He stopped listening to the vocabulary entirely.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Instead, he started matching the rhythm and the vibe. Imagine a DJ matching the beats per minute on 2 turntables. Marcy would watch the driver's posture. If the driver's rhythm was bouncy and light, Marcy would physically bounce his energy.
Oh, I see.
He'd alter the pitch of his non-verbal vocalizations, like the ahs and ohs to match the driver's pitch. If the driver's tone got heavy and serious, Marcy grounded his posture and lowered his pitch. He simply flowed with the friction of the unknown.
Okay, wait. I have to push back here for a second.
Sure.
Isn't that just patronizing? Like, isn't he just faking a conversation and treating the driver like a sound effect?
I mean, from a purely logical standpoint, it might look like faking, but we have to look at this through an Eastern philosophical lens. What Marcy was doing was practicing ego death.
Ego death. How does nodding along in a car equate to ego death?
Think about what it means to demand to understand every single word. That is your ego needing control over the environment.
Yep.
It's an assertion that the world must make logical sense to you. By dropping the desperate need to logically parse the sentences, Marcy was erasing his own ego from the interaction. He was practicing deep emotional attunement.
He was connecting with the human being's emotional state rather than their vocabulary.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, when you frame it like that, it's actually beautiful. You drop the need to be right or to be in the driver's seat of the conversation, and you just share the emotional space.
Exactly. And that domestic trial by fire, that ability to completely surrender his ego and go with the flow, wasn't just a neat psychological trick. It was a mandatory survival skill for what he was about to do.
Because of the ferry.
Right, because when he stepped onto that ferry to Korea, he wasn't just leaving familiar customs behind, he was severing his connection to his own language entirely.
Which is a terrifying prospect in 2001. We really have to remember the physical reality of this. Today, if you feel homesick in a foreign country, you pull out your phone, you open YouTube, and you instantly hear your native language.
It's instantaneous.
Yeah. But to prepare for this total isolation, Marcy packed his backpack with books.
A lot of books. He carried up to 30 physical books at a time.
Wait, 30. You're joking. That is like 15, maybe 20 pounds of dead weight in a backpack that he has to lug around on foot.
The physical burden was immense, but you have to understand why. Those physical pages and his CD player were his absolute only anchors to his mother tongue. Without them, he would be adrift in a sea of total incomprehension for months.
Hence, blasting the Japanese dance music in the Iranian desert. He was carrying his culture as a shield.
Precisely.
But what exactly was in this 30-book library? Because I imagine you weren't carrying 20 pounds of, light beach reads.
No, definitely not. It was a very deliberate mix. He carried political thrillers by Nobuhiko Okiai, which he explicitly used as pacing books.
Pacing books, like a palate cleanser.
Exactly. The prose was accessible and thrilling, so he used them to rest his brain. Because the rest of his bag was incredibly heavy, intellectually speaking. He carried sweeping historical novels by Ryotaro Shiba, and crucially, he carried some highly polarizing political texts.
Like what?
Specifically, works by Yukio Mishima and a very controversial manga called Sensoran by Yoshinori Kobayashi.
Okay, it's probably worth noting right here for context. We are looking at these specific books purely as historical artifacts of his mindset at the time.
Absolutely.
We certainly aren't endorsing the right-wing, nationalist, or anti-mass media views of authors like Mishima or Kobayashi, but we really need to look at the why. Why was a 20-something backpacker weighing himself down with these highly polarizing texts as fuel for his trip?
Because for Marcy, those books acted as a massive catalyst for critical thinking. They actively shook up his worldview. Reading those authors, regardless whether you agree with their conclusions, made him question the spoon-fed media narratives he grew up with. Yeah, they sparked a profound realization. He didn't want to just read about the geopolitical history of Imperial Japan in a textbook.
He wanted to verify reality for himself.
Exactly.
He wanted to go to the Asian mainland and see the physical footprint of that history with his own two eyes.
Yes. That desire to seek his own truth is what propelled him across the ocean. But interestingly enough, the initial spark for this kind of radical, life-altering journey didn't actually originate with him.
No. And this is one of my favorite details from the sources. The entire genesis of this wanderlust comes from a high school friend of his, a guy the sources refer to as Okun.
Okun is such a fascinating character.
He sounds like an absolute legend. The sources say Okun was this brilliant kid obsessed with the theory of relativity and aliens. And then, one day, right before graduation, he just abruptly drops out of high school to walk across Japan.
Just completely abandons the prescribed path.
Yeah. And to fund this walk, Okun sells Marcy his prized 80,000 yen guitar for just 20,000 yen.
Which is an incredible deal, by the way.
Right. But we all have that one wild card friend. The one who completely shatters your idea of what a normal timeline is supposed to look like. You think you're supposed to graduate, get a corporate job, follow the rules, and then your friend sells you his guitar for cheap, drops out, and literally walks into the woods.
It's the ultimate disruption.
It accidentally gives you permission to live radically.
It does. And Okun's influence primed Marcy to be receptive to what became the ultimate backpacker's Bible, a book that gave Marcy and a whole generation of Japanese travelers a shared spiritual vocabulary.
You're talking about Midnight Express or Shinya Tokyo by Kotaro Sawaki.
Yes. Marcy read this famous travelogue while working at a mountain lodge, saving money for his trip. It's a legendary account of a journey from Delhi to London. But it's not just a guidebook. It poses incredibly deep ethical dilemmas.
And this is where the deep dive gets really philosophical. because that book forced Marcy to confront what we can call the beggar's dilemma.
This is arguably the ethical climax of his preparation. In the book, Sawaki explicitly argues that a traveler should not give money to beggars in Asia.
And the reasoning Sawaki provides is brutally logical.
It is.
He argued that giving money feeds a corrupt, mafia-like syndicate. The children or individuals begging on the street often don't keep a single coin. The money gets funneled up to organizations that exploit poverty. So logically, by giving money, you are directly funding that exploitation.
It's a cold, hard utilitarian stance. And Marcy, being a rational young traveler who genuinely wanted to do the right thing, adopted this rule. As he traveled, he logically decided to keep his money in his pocket to avoid participating in that corrupt business.
But imagine the physical friction of that choice.
Oh, it must have been agonizing.
Seriously.
Yeah.
You are walking down a street. A child holds out their hand. You have your hand in your pocket, fingers wrapped around a few coins. You feel the physical tension of your logical brain fighting your empathetic heart.
Yeah.
You walk past them knowing you are technically, logically right, but feeling spiritually awful.
And that exact friction leads to the most profound spiritual evolution in our sources. Because we get Marcy's modern-day reflection on this exact choice, looking back 20 years later.
And what is his takeaway now after 2 decades of reflection?
He deeply regrets it.
Really?
Yes, he spiritually regrets withholding the money.
Even knowing the logic was sound?
Yes, because he realized that even if the system is a business, even if the logic is flawless, grace and generosity shouldn't always be dictated by cold calculation. He realized that sometimes the act of giving isn't just about fixing the economic reality of the receiver.
It's for the soul of the giver.
Exactly.
That is incredibly powerful. You protect your wallet, but you starve your own soul.
It transcends Western logic entirely. It's an acknowledgement that when you close your hand based purely on a logical argument, you lose a fundamental piece of your own humanity.
Wow. And that realization, that evolution from a rigid, logical planner to someone who understands the messy, egoless flow of human connection, it perfectly encapsulates why this Japanese leg of his trip was so vital.
It really was the foundation for everything that came next.
Right. This domestic journey, carrying 30 heavy books, dodging Yakuza on a dark highway, learning to match the rhythm of a stranger's incomprehensible dialect. It was all a crucible.
It forged him. It stripped away his need for total control, and it left him prepared to take on the Asian continent, tracing the ancient path of the legendary monks on Zohoshi from Journey to the West all the way along the Silk Road toward Israel.
Which brings us right back to the core question we started with. How did he navigate the unknown? He did it by letting go.
Yeah.
He let go of his need for logical control. He leaned into the emotional rhythm of strangers. And most importantly, he allowed himself to be transformed by the friction of travel rather than fighting against it.
He stopped trying to curate the perfect experience and let the experience curate him.
Exactly. So here's a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. In 2001, Marcy dropping his phone in a mailbox and stepping onto a ferry was an extreme act of disconnection.
Unthinkable today.
Totally. Today, we use our smartphones to eliminate every single ounce of friction, uncertainty, and boredom from our lives. We optimize our routes, we translate our conversations instantly, and we map out every single stop before we ever leave the house.
We avoid the unknown at all costs.
Right. But if true self-discovery only happens when our rigid plans fall apart, or when we are forced to blindly match the rhythm of a stranger, what parts of yourself are you failing to discover? Simply because your GPS is always turned on.
That is definitely something to think about the next time you feel the urge to check your notifications.
Absolutely. Join us next time as we finally board that ferry, cross the ocean to South Korea, and begin the next massive chapter of this journey. Until then, thanks for taking the deep dive.